Multilinguals, what's your? They didn't realize I could understand their language story. I live in England but I come from Poland and am fluent in Polish alongside English. Couple of days ago I was ordering at a Subway when two Polish employees started talking. It went something along the lines of "this fat ass wants chicken and bacon," and they laughed. On a side note, I feel like that's not that uncommon of an order, right? When it got to putting vegetables on the sub, I gave my order fully in Polish with a big smile on my face. The order cost me £4.80, but the looks on their faces were priceless. I was solo traveling in Morocco. I'm 22 and female and speak Arabic enough to understand conversations, basic words and phrases, etc. I was trying on clothes at a small shop and there were two women helping me choose what to try on. They started talking about me in Arabic, saying how I would be a great wife for one of the ladies' sons. They were going on, and as I was leaving I responded in Arabic, "No thank you, but I appreciate your help," and they were stunned. Was a high school student in Toronto, but I speak Slovak, which is similar to Czech and Polish. I was going to school on the subway in the morning and two good-looking women started to talk in Polish right next to me. I usually like to strike up conversations with fellow Central/Eastern Europeans. Unfortunately, they started talking about how one of them has had a burning pee problem. With nowhere to move on the packed subway and no headphones, it was an awkward thing for a 15-year-old to hear from two ladies. It got a little worse later when they started to talk about women problems. Now I have no issues with that convo nowadays, of course, but 15-year-old virgin me was a bit mortified. A long 45 minutes. I'm a Black American. My dad was military and stationed in Korea from his late teens to mid-20s. He picked up on the language, and as a child he taught me. It was like our secret language to talk around my mom with. She hated it. Anyway, I went to college with a large Asian population. While me and some friends were in a study room, a group of students came and I asked us to leave so they could use the room in English. There was no time limit, no sign up, no nothing where they had that right. So I explained that we were here first, why do they want this particular room? Then they start speaking Korean and say something along the lines of, "Ugh, of course the black bitch is being difficult, they've been here for a while, they need to leave, maybe we can lie and say the professor reserved it." I respond, in Korean, "Call be a bitch in English so I can punch you," and everyone in this room knows why their faces turned bright red. They couldn't say anything, they just looked at me in shock and then left the room. Not me, but my dad, very white guy with equally white Irish last name, was born and raised in India. He speaks a variety of languages: Gujarati, Hindi, Konkani, English, Portuguese, etc. He was at an airport and sitting across from two young Indian women. One was saying to the other in Hindi, "Look at that fat old white guy over there." My dad got up, walked over to them and greeted them in Hindi, proceeding to make small talk about their flights and days. From his telling, there was a mix of shock and absolute embarrassment coming from them. He smiled and walked back to his baggage. My dad grew up in Egypt and now travels the world for Dole the fruit company. Once he was in Morocco at a plant who were possible suppliers and they tried to deceive him. They showed him the safety guidelines that were written in Arabic, but were describing different standards in English. My dad doesn't look like a typical Middle Easterner and has a very nondescript accent, so they thought they could fleece him. After the dude was done talk, my dad says that's not what it says, and the guy says, "What do you mean?" My dad repeats the statement but in Arabic. The guy apparently dropped his jaw and all he could say was, "You speak Arabic?" Needless to say, that Moroccan plant did not get the gig. Not me, but my dad. We are from South Africa. My dad speaks 5 English, Afrikaans similar to Dutch, French, Italian, and German. He emigrated to the UK in early 1995 when a lot of other South Africans were doing the same due to embedded racism of a fledgling nation, but I digress. He was on the Underground in London when he overheard 2 guys speaking about a pretty woman on the train in Afrikaans, my dad's native tongue. According to Dad, they were being incredibly rude and using quite graphic descriptions of what they wanted to do to her. My dad decided to speak up, and told them to fuck off, and to not speak to people that way, they don't know who is listening. The 2 guys looked horror-struck and shut up immediately. The lady turned to my dad at her stop and said, in fluent Afrikaans, "I bet they couldn't do half those things with their tiny dicks." My dad just laughed in shock and watched her get off the train. Pretty hilarious. Moved to Thailand and took naive language training. Was drinking coffee in a quiet shop and the barista and the waitress started guessing my age, where I was from, why I came there 3 days in a row, lived close by, and I was thinking, cool. They think I'm cute. How flattering. And then the barista said, "But he is a little fat." So when I left I told her my age and hometown. When she brought the change back I told her that yes, I am a little fat. Well, my great aunt told a story of how she once went into a butcher shop. When she walked in, the butcher was talking with a customer in Russian which she spoke. The butcher saw my great aunt walk in and told the costumer in Russian that he'd take care of this old hag, and then continue the conversation. So my great aunt in English asked for pounds and pounds of cold cuts, all sliced and wrapped. When it was all ready, she told him in Russian, to shove it up your ass, and walked out. God, I loved that woman. I was on the subway in NYC a few months ago when a family sitting across from me was playing I Spy in Hebrew with their kids. The parents went around describing each person they saw on the train, so when they got to me I decided to play along. I looked up from my book, made a funny face, and covered my face with the book before the kids could find me. The parents started laughing and said to their kids, "I spy someone who understands us." The parents and I shared a good laugh about it while their kids got really excited that someone else spoke Hebrew. They never figured out who it was, but it made my commute a lot more fun. My late best friend, who was big, tall and blonde, was in Tim Hortons. He speaks fairly fluent Arabic, having spent 7 years working in Saudi Arabia. 3 Arabic men were sitting at a table making very lewd comments about the women in the shop. My buddy turned to them and said in Arabic, "You need to shut up before someone kicks your ass. You never know who is listening." They got very confused, and left soon after. Please like, comment, and subscribe.